Cardinals spring training in Jupiter, Florida. We find Matt Pauley there for the Gashouse gang, sponsored by Game Day Men's Health, Saliga Heating and Cooling. I'm Tom Ackerman. Matt, always a pleasure. How are things down in sunny Florida?
Yeah, so today was a pretty big day. This is probably the biggest day of spring so far. Tom, we had 5 separate fields going of live BPs, and Sonny Gray was out there, Gordon Graceffo, Zach Thompson, Ryan Helsley, JoJo Romero, Riley O'Brien, Steven Matz, Kyle Leahy, Chris Roycroft, just to name a few. I've got my cheat sheet right here. Tons of people were out there, and some of the hitting groups were kind of interesting. I thought there was one hitting group specifically that had Nolan Arenado, Wilson Contreras, Lars Nootbaar, and Brendan Donovan. Tom, Nootbaar took Ryan Fernandez deep on what it's the loudest reaction I have heard of anything that has happened so far here in spring. I mean, the moment that it came off his bat, everybody knew that thing was going to be gone. So baseball things are happening.
Lars Nootbaar is a freak. He's a freak athlete. If he can stay healthy, he is capable of hitting home runs in the 20s. He is capable of hitting for a high average, I feel like. He obviously can get on base at a high rate. He's capable of playing center field, quite honestly. And I think that he is your center fielder for 2025, with Victor Scott and Michael Ciani certainly putting some pressure on him, and having some depth there is very good. But I don't see any reason why you wouldn't have Lars Nootbaar as a center fielder, whether he leads off, bats second, bats in the middle of the order. I think he's one of those guys that could hit anywhere in the lineup.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I would put him in center field for sure. I'm not sure Ollie wants to do that. I think he really, really values having a defense-first center fielder. But at the same time, the topic of conversation today during our media session with Ollie was about the team needing to score runs. And Tom, if they go out and they're a really good offensive club and they score tons and tons of runs and you don't need to have depth in the lineup, then yeah, throw Michael Ciani or Victor Scott in center field and see what those guys can do. See if what we saw for about a 6-week period last year from Ciani is real. See if what Victor Scott has done in the minor leagues can play out at the big league level. But this team is so similar to the team last year. And the thing that took the team down last year was their lack of scoring runs. So I would want to see the team come out of the gate ready to score runs.
Yeah, give me a ferocious lineup with max run scoring. So I already tossed mine out earlier this week. We had a nice, healthy debate about that on Monday. And just from memory, Mason Wynn leading off, playing shortstop. That was kind of the subject of the debate, where most of you thought that it'd be better fit for someone with a higher OBP, and I totally get that. My contention was let Mason continue to work on that and improve on that. He's an excellent, excellent player. He's shown the ability to get on base when he's leading off an inning a little bit better, and he has cut down on strikeouts when he knows he has to lead off an inning. So I'd be willing to give him that opportunity until he can't do it, and then I give it to somebody else. But honestly, I'm fine with Nootbaar, Donovan, whoever. But let's just, for the sake of the lineup that I think could put on max scoring ability, let's have Wynn lead it off just for now, with Donovan batting second, which he actually did not do last year. Donovan was not a number 2 hitter in this order. He was middle of the order, first in the order to start the year. But I'd go Donovan second, playing left field, Contreras at first base, batting third. Then my 4 hitter was Burleson. I'm kind of doing this right, left thing. So Burleson as the DH, batting 4th, Arenado 5th as the third baseman. 6th, I had Nootbaar playing in center field. 7th, Walker in right. 8th, Gorman at second, which I know he's going to see some time at third and it will be a DH also. And then my 9 hitter was Herrera, who I think will move up, but he's the better hitting catcher. If I look at that lineup, you want to talk about offense that can do damage. Wynn, Donovan, Contreras, Burleson, Arenado, Nootbaar, Walker, Gorman, Herrera, all capable of hitting the ball over the fence also. I think that's an important point to make.
That group, and again, we differ slightly on how we would line them up, but
Sure.
That group of players is without a doubt to me the group of players that is going to score the most runs. So those are the guys I want to see in the lineup. I don't think there is a classic 9-hole guy on the team either. Like, I'm not quite sure who that would be. I struggle with the 3 spot again. I mentioned this the other day. I was reading something recently where, and it's because the 3-hitter comes up to the plate in the first inning with bases empty and 2 outs a lot, but the 3-hitter statistically comes up to the plate more often in a bases empty 2-out situation, which is the worst time to hit of any one. So there's a lot of, from the stat heads out there, there's a lot of push to take your best hitter out of the 3 spot. Now, you're also always hitting in the first inning, so it's a combination of giving a hitter the most opportunity to drive in runs versus also giving that same hitter just the most opportunities, period. So I'm not a huge lineup construction guy. I think sometimes we make a little bit too much of it. There are some basic things you need to do, and outside of that, it's all going to work itself out. But yeah, that group, those players that you mentioned, I have a belief that they can score runs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know also that a batting order can change throughout the game. I mean, you're going to have, your 9-hitter sometimes can be another leadoff guy. Some people like to do that. They like to stack the 9 and the 1. You're going to have most people in this order are going to be up with an opportunity to drive in runs. So it doesn't mean that you're sold on, 1 through 9 has this specific role. I mean, everyone's got to have an ability to drive in a run, get on base. You want that throughout your lineup. You want to be able to string together at bats as best you can. And I think it'll be interesting to see how they align those 9, but I do agree with you. I think those are the 9. I'm really curious about battles positionally for this team. So I wonder, because we talked about this a little bit at first base, how much play Burleson will get at first. And I've never been you can't play somebody against lefties because he's a lefty. Learn how to hit lefties. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it's just old school, but what's wrong with, getting more at bats, as many at bats as possible. I'm not as much of a mix and match, although I know I get it. I mean, I see it all the time. Luke and Baker would come into play in a scenario possibly for facing a lefty pitcher, for example. But how do you see what would be the weak link in that kind of a lineup against, let's say, a lefty?
Well, I think just generally speaking, before we get into that, it's an interesting conversation to be had because I don't think the Cardinals have done as good of a job, specifically last year. I don't think they did as good a job as they did doing some platoon type things and really playing off the handedness. Now, Nolan Gorman 2 years ago, they finally gave him the opportunities to face righties and lefties, and he was somebody who came through. So I'm a believer in, to your point about Alec Burleson, you can give him that shot and see if he can improve in that area. But at the same time, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to continue to pencil somebody into the lineup every single day against either a lefty or a righty who they're going to struggle against and them not perform. So
Right.
I am of the belief that 2 things can be true. You should have kind of a set group of players that you use against lefties and a set group of players that you use against righties. And there's going to be guys on the team that you don't play very often if there's a left-hander on the mound and vice versa. But at the same time, you do pick and choose some spots, whether it's leaving them in the game to face a relief pitcher of a handedness or whatever it might be. You do give them the opportunity to show that they can elevate themselves to being a true everyday player. And I kind of throw what Gorman did last year out of the window. Again, if you go back to what he had done the year before, he had really improved in that area. It's an area that Burleson does have to improve. And if Burleson doesn't, Tom, then he absolutely should be a platoon kind of guy. And whether you're going to put a Luke and Baker in there or somebody else in there, you do, because you can't just pencil in the exact same lineup every single day, whether it's a righty or lefty on the mound, when you have players on the roster who are very, who excel against one and don't against the other.
Yeah, it's an interesting scenario they put themselves into where you do want to see as much of, like, let's say, Nolan Gorman as possible. And I think it'll be fascinating to see how he adjusts. The video that you posted, was it yesterday, the day before? I think it was yesterday. Gorman taking BP. His swing looks
Compact.
a little different to me.
Yeah.
Compact.
Super compact.
He's always had that real quick swing. He's got those quick hands. Boy, it looked different to me. I'm very curious to see how he comes out of the gate.
Yeah, and when I marvel, Tom, at professional athletes or just high level of athletes of any level, I always marvel at the idea that you have done something that has gotten you to the highest level and you've done it a certain way for so long. And then you get to a point you're at the highest level and it's not quite working and you go make changes. And when the game matters, like I just can't imagine the ability. It's one thing to go have a different look and swing when you're taking live BP and when you're in the cage and all these things. But when the games start mattering, for you to be able to take those tweaks and take those changes, which are something that you've a little bit different from what you have done for 10, 20, 30 years, however long it is. I always marvel at athletes that are able to do that.
Without question. It's going to be a lot of fun. There are some comments that are coming in with Gorman and Walker to get 550 at bats. Won't they need to bat 3 through 6? 550 at bats is a lot. Yes, probably. But right now, I'm not putting them at 3 through 6. They're going to have to show me that they're capable of handling that load and being more consistent. I mean, when I have Contreras and Burleson and Arenado and Nootbaar, I'm more comfortable with those guys getting on base and doing what they have to do, making contact, making hard contact, than I am Walker and Gorman for now. But there will be, I think, an opportunity for them. And by the way, I'll say it again, Herrera will elevate. I had him at 9. Maybe that's unfair. I just put him there because I didn't know who else to put at 9. He will eventually be a 3 through 6, I think, in his career. I think he projects as that. Just the eye test tells you that, but if you start to examine his numbers, I believe they will continue to rise in a lot of areas.
If I were putting together a lineup tomorrow, Walker and Gorman would probably be my 8-9. I would already have Herrera much higher in the lineup, an opportunity to drive in runs. They'll be fine in terms of number of plate appearances. I get the idea that if you're batting in the 3 through 6 spot, you're going to get one extra plate appearance in probably 70% of the games, 60% of the games compared to the others. But I take all the pressure off of Gorman and Walker, and I put them down at the bottom of the order and let these guys fight for a top, better spot in the order. It's a good problem to have if you don't know who to put in the 9 spot.
It's the Gashouse Gang from KMOX with Matt Pauley. I'm Tom Ackerman. This is sponsored by Game Day Men's Health, Saliga Heating and Cooling, and we're talking Cardinal baseball from Jupiter, Florida with Matt. That first base position, Contreras owns it, but Burleson will see time there. Baker will see time there. Do you see either of those two pushing Wilson at all and maybe pushing him a little more into a DH role? How do you see first base? Is there a position battle at all at first base?
I don't think so. I guess there's a scenario where Burleson puts himself in position to play at first base a little bit more. That's his natural position. There's a lot of talk about him being very comfortable being back over there at first base, but we're not giving Wilson Contreras credit for the type of athlete he is. So Contreras is the single most important hitter on this team. Let him be comfortable in his role on the team, and that role is being a first baseman. If he needs a day off from the field and you want to DH him or whatever, that's fine. But no, I don't think that's a positional battle. I think they'll get Contreras his days off, whether it's total days off or days at the DH. And in that situation, you can put Burleson over there, but that's not going to be something that should happen very often.
I agree with you. I think it's Wilson's job. Second base, let's kind of go around the horn. Second base, I've got Gorman there, but there are some options, aren't there, Matt? You can move around some people.
Yeah, Gorman and Donovan are the first two, and we're only really putting Gorman there because of the Arenado situation. Had Arenado been traded, then Gorman would have been over at third, and Donovan would have been the guy that we saw play a lot of second base. There's going to be at least another guy on the team who can play second base as well, whether Jose Fermin makes the team, Barrero's around. We'll see with Thomas Sajaci. I just don't think there's the plate appearances for Sajaci with Arenado on the team if everybody's healthy, but they're going to have options at second. But Gorman will get his time, and that's kind of like what we said with Contreras. When you want to give Gorman a day off from the field, you've got the opportunity to put him in the DH spot. Those two will be connected to each other. Contreras gets a day, Burleson goes to first, Gorman goes to the DH, Donovan comes in, plays second.
Yeah, I mean Arenado's position here, and as we move to third base, kind of nudges Sajasi off this roster for the time being. I mean, he's got to get some ABs in Memphis, I would think. And then you're going to have an injury, unfortunately, and you're going to need a call up, and he'll be hopefully warm and ready to go at that point. You know, kind of having him come off the bench doesn't really do you any good. When Arenado takes a day off, you can move Gorman to third. I mean, I don't think there's any problem with that, do you? Donovan can play it too.
Yeah, I think if there wasn't the idea that maybe at some point Nolan Arenado is not going to be on this team, I think you look at Donovan first as being that guy. But because at some point you feel like Gorman's probably going to become the primary third baseman for the Cardinals, I don't know when that's going to happen, especially if he comes through offensively. Anytime Arenado doesn't play, they should move Gorman over at third just so he can continue to be comfortable in that spot. But much like Contreras, Tom, Gorman plays because of his offensive ability and his ability to hit the ball over the fence more so than anything he's going to do for you defensively.
From Mason Wynn's your shortstop. No Brandon Crawford this time around. He's the man at shortstop, but there will be some opportunities for a Fermin or somebody like that to jump in there. Of course, Donovan can do everything, include sell popcorn if you want. The guy does everything. So, you know, you could have any
guy who might spell if Hellman makes the team, he might be the guy who plays shortstop on days that Wynn gets off.
Sure, you can do anything there at shortstop with those guys, but it's going to be Wynn's job. Left field, I at the moment, you know, I look at it and I think that's got to be Brendan Donovan now that Arenado is at third base. But as we mentioned, there are some options there. I don't know that Burleson is going to see much more time out in left. They did challenge him at the start of last year. Let's see you be able to break on balls a little bit better and move around a little bit better in the outfield. But, you know, it just is what it is. They have better options out there if they need it.
Yeah, if you got to throw him out there, he's fine. You love his throwing arm. You'd love to put his throwing arm onto somebody else's, speed and agility and things like that. That's his major strength in terms of being an outfielder. But the Cardinals have many better options, and Burleson's going to be a DH first and probably a first baseman second. And I think there's probably even a scenario where we don't see him in the outfield at all this year.
And Jordan Walker's only position right now is right field. Can he play third base? Absolutely. He used to be. Can he play first base? Sure, but that's not where he's going to be. I mean, you know, he is going to be the right fielder, period, end of story. So let's skip it and go to center field, which I think is more intriguing. So we started off by talking about this, but give me a scenario and tell me which one has the edge right now. Ollie Marmol wants to go defense. Is he going Michael Ciani or Victor Scott? My gut tells me this is Ciani's job to lose at that position.
It is. I agree. Here's the thing that doesn't all add up, though, because the other day we were talking with Ollie, and he talked about Lars Nootbaar and said that he would bet on Nootbaar having just a monster season. And we've talked about Nootbaar's underlying numbers, the StatCast numbers, how all those numbers say that if he stays healthy, he's somebody who should be putting up all-star caliber numbers on an every year basis. Well, where does he go? If he's not in center field, who are you sitting down? They're not going to sit down Jordan Walker. They're not going to sit down Brendan Donovan. The only scenario is Alec Burleson goes to the bench and Donovan goes to second and Gorman becomes your primary DH. But we're talking about a guy in Burleson who absolutely has earned the opportunity to be an everyday guy at the start. So if they don't score runs and they're hell-bent on Ciani being in center field, that's probably the pathway to getting Nootbaar into the lineup is by putting Gorman as your DH and Donovan at second.
And then if you're looking at defense up the middle, Pages is better than Herrera. I will give him that. I mean, he is a good pitch caller. He's a good defensive catcher. He's not Yachty. Nobody else will ever be, but he's a terrific receiver. But Herrera, I'm willing to let him learn on the job too because his bat is so special. Pages, it's not like he, bats 100. I mean, he can knock one out of there every once in a while and make something happen, but he's not in Herrera's caliber of offense.
No, he's not. And Herrera has done a ton of work in the offseason defensively to be a better receiver and also be better at throwing runners out. And Oliver Marmol has spoke glowingly about the work that Herrera did. If we start to get into, Grateful League games, which begin Saturday against the Marlins on KMOX, if we see Herrera be that guy behind the plate defensively where it looks better than it looked last year, I don't know how you keep him out of the lineup on an almost everyday basis.
And if anybody's curious, you can just go back to the show yesterday, but we'll answer it here now. And by the way, you can go to YouTube, subscribe to KMOX Sports, and you can watch all of these shows. You could drive across the country and listen to every single show we've ever done, because this is episode number 74, and it would just take you talk about a great road trip. You'd hear all the Cardinals conversation. But anyway, we talked yesterday, I think maybe the day before too, but definitely yesterday, about if an injury happens to Pages and Herrera, do they break glass and go to Contreras again? I'm going to say no, they do not do that. He is the first baseman, and it's not just for that reason. It's because they want to extend his season and his career and keep him healthy. And so they would go to Jimmy Crooks, I would think. Bring him up, let the kid play. Guy's a gamer and a winner and a fun guy to talk to, by the way. I think I've really enjoyed my conversation with Jimmy.
Yeah, me as well. We had him on Countdown to Opening Day, I think, a couple weeks ago, and I talked to him in the clubhouse for a few minutes just a few days ago. He's a really fun guy to have a conversation with, and right now he looks to likely be the frontline catcher of the future for the Cardinals. And I guess when Bernal gets here, there'll be a discussion to be had. But Crooks is really good. He's going to get most of the time at Memphis. They've got another veteran guy at Memphis that they brought in the offseason. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But he, I think the answer, if there is an injury, if there's a need for a third catcher at the big league level, it is go to Crooks. They are not going to hand things back off to Contreras. People keep bringing that up. And, guys work entire off seasons on what they're going to do in the upcoming season. And Contreras has spent the entire offseason working on first base. He's not going to – it would be unfair to him to all of a sudden say, hey, until Herrera or until Pages gets healthy, we need you to be behind the plate. That's not what he is preparing for this season.
Yeah, I mean, would that be unbelievable? I mean, you would be like, what are they doing now? I mean, they went from pulling him off of catcher to become an outfielder to back to catcher to this to that. There's no way that's going to happen. I will say Crooks kind of reminds me of, remember Jason Kendall with the Pirates? That just tough, can hit, can defend. Everybody likes him, leader. I'm excited to see what Jimmy Crooks can do. And that kind of wraps up any other position battles that we missed there, that we just went through the 8.
Yeah, I think we hit them all. And I guess there's going to be battles for bench spots, obviously. The, Sajasis, Fermins, Barreros, Hellman, Baker. I'm probably missing somebody in Koperniak. Those guys are going to be the guys who are battling for bench spots. And I think those are completely up for grabs. The one thing that you have to make sure that you have on your bench is somebody who can back up at shortstop. And because I don't think they really want to put Brendan Donovan there. That's not something they can do it if they need to, but they would like to have a better option for the handful of games that Mason Wynn does not play. They'd like to have a better option for shortstop. But those are, when you think we talk about Sajasi, is there enough playing time? Well, probably not. So you look at a more veteran guy like Fermin, who bluntly you're not worried about playing time with him. When it comes to Luke and Baker, we know what he can do against left-handed pitching. But because he is kind of a one-trick pony, you don't really even want to put him out there defensively at first base. You can if you need to, but he is a DH pinch hitter, and that's his primary role. Is there value? Can he hit enough? Can he thump enough to give himself a spot on the roster? Those are the questions that are going to be answered here during Grapefruit League play.
With Matt Pauley, I'm Tom Ackerman. This is the Gashouse Gang, sponsored by Game Day Men's Health and Saliga Heating and Cooling. We're going to be seeing a lot of Grapefruit League here shortly. You're going to have some games on the radio side. I'll be doing some radio and TV when I get down there. I'm excited to hear John and Ricky and Claves and Alexa Dat doing some play-by-play, Chip Carey doing play-by-play. It's going to be a lot of fun to hear all the play-by-play and to be able to see this in action. And I do think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for some of these players in the middle to later innings too. Like if I were to put in on one hand players I'm looking forward to seeing, JJ Weatherholt's on that list. Now, he's not going to be with the club unless something absolutely drastic happened he's not going to be with the club to start the year, but it shouldn't be long. And I'm just curious, based on your early observations of Weatherholt before we move into the starting rotation. I've got a lot of questions about that. What's the latest on Weatherholt? Give me a Weatherholt update.
Yeah, I think he's just somebody who's he's here and he's doing what he's being told to do. Go work, go do what you're supposed to. He's not in a primetime spot right now. There's obviously not much plan for him to be with the big league club. He's going to get reassigned to minor league camp at some point in time. I guess maybe he could extend it out a little bit if he hits well during Grapefruit League play. But for him, Tom, this is about the experience of being in big league camp more than anything else. He can check off the list that he's been in a big league clubhouse. He's getting to know these guys. He's hitting in the tunnel and in the cages with these guys. All those things. There's been a lot of talk the last couple of days from Oliver Marmol about how prescribed and how intentional they are with things like locker placement and hitting groups and stuff like that. So they are trying to surround JJ Weatherholt with as much positivity as possible. They're giving him as many opportunities as they can without that infringing upon the guys who really need those opportunities. At some point, he's not going to be in big league camp anymore. He's going to head to minor league camp. We'll see if he goes to where he ends up this year. There's a chance we see him in the big leagues before the season is over. But this is not a performance-based major league camp for JJ Weatherholt. This is an experience-based big league camp for him.
I mean, how incredible is that they have the 7th overall pick in the draft and they're going to get 5 going this summer. Whoever number 5 is will also be a franchise changing type player. And Mason Wynn has already established himself. Lauren wanted to know, would that be Matt or would that be Matt's? Are we talking about you, Matt? Or are we talking about Matt?
Do I look sweaty? Is that what's going on? Do I have a gleam? Was Matt's? I was jumping around from field.
It's Matt's. Lauren says it's Matt's. There you go.
Yes, Matt's did throw. I was not watching him. I did not get to. Again, they had 5 fields of live BP going today. Matt's did throw live BP. If you want to report on it, you're going to have to look elsewhere because I did not see a moment of it.
All right, I'm with you on that, but it does lead into my next question here. Steven Matz, can you envision him in the starting rotation? For me, I can't because of the track record, and I like him personally, but I have not seen enough of him. I mean, it's been injury after injury, and when he's healthy, he has a track record of consistency, but the health is just not there. So I'm looking at a rotation of Sonny Gray and Eric Fetty, 1-2. I think that's fair. I think my third is Palante. I think Palante was the best pitcher on this team for a stretch last year, and I think he's going to come out blazing. He has figured out how to get big league hitters out, He was always tough against lefties for whatever reason, the ball coming out of his hand or, how they were able to pick it up or his velocity. But he figured out a way to throw a fastball that can keep right-handers guessing, mixed with some of his pitches. He has figured it out. Palante is going to have a very good year. 4 is Michaelis, who's going to have to show us a lot more. And then 5 to me is wide open. If it's not Matt's, it's got to be Michael McGreevy if he has a good Grapefruit League. Do you think so?
I still think Steven Matz is going to get the first opportunity. If Steven Matz and Michael McGreevy each pitch well in Grapefruit League play and they go with a 5-man rotation, I think they're going to hand the job to Matz before they're going to hand it to McGreevy. Now, I don't think they're going to put McGreevy in the bullpen. I think there's even an opportunity to go to a 6-man rotation to start the season, and maybe you have all 6 of those guys in. But I do envision a scenario where Steven Matz is in the rotation. The question for him is, can he stay healthy? If he's healthy, he's in the rotation.
This rotation also could have Quinn Matthews in it at some point. And I think Quinn's going to see some time on the bump, isn't he, in Grapefruit League play? We're going to see him quite a bit.
Yeah, I think they've not officially said, but I believe the inference that we have been given is that we are likely to see him start one of the two games when the Cardinals go on the road next week. They're going to go over to the other side of Florida next Tuesday and Wednesday. They play the Yankees one of those games. I can't think of who they play in the other one. Doesn't really matter. But indications are that Quinn Matthews is likely to start one of those two games.
Yeah, they send the big boys here where you are. They send the younger guys out west. Those big boys don't travel as much, but that could certainly change if Quinn Matthews pitches well. I think he's got a shot, but he's probably better fit to just let it rip in Memphis, where he did not finish very well last year, and he's kind of upset about that. Let him finish it and then get rolling here when they need him in the rotation. I would put McGreevy in there if I can, but I agree with you. I think they'll give Matt a free chance to make that 5-man rotation. All right, if you wouldn't mind, Thomas has commented a couple of times about robot umpires. So this is the ABS system that is being tested in spring training. Major League Baseball is going to play around with this in spring training, and Roger Dean Chevrolet Stadium will be one of those venues for the ABS. I haven't heard full details on this necessarily, Matt, but I know that they are going to do this, automatic balls and strikes. There will be a rectangle that you see on TV that they'll be playing around with. They will allow the managers to challenge. And it's something that I think was taken very well in the minor leagues, and there's a little bit of a balance. So you're letting the umpires make the calls, but you're letting the managers, not every single time, obviously. They only get X number of challenges, but they are allowing the managers to challenge, keep the game moving, kind of like they use the replay system. Pitch clock should move things along quite nicely.
Yeah, I like it. Anything you can do to get more calls correct, you should do. That should not be a controversial statement at all. If you can get more calls correct without it just completely stopping the game, then you need to do it. So I'm excited to see what it's going to look like. I do look the automated strike zone in some form or fashion, whether it's the challenge system or whether it's just going straight 100%. It's going to come to Major League Baseball regular season games sooner than later. I think 2026 is a possibility for that. And we're all going to get to see what it looks like here in spring games this year. People who have seen it in the minor leagues, I hear more positive things, Tom, about the challenge system than I do about the just letting the robot call balls and strikes all the time. So at least for starting, I think they'll go to that challenge system.
This is the Gashouse Gang with Matt Pauley. I'm Tom Ackerman. Glad you're with us here on this program. You can subscribe to YouTube, KMOX Sports. We'll have an absolute blast with you. All you have to do is subscribe. It's really important to hit the subscribe button on that. It doesn't cost you anything. And what it does is it brings our show up right away. So you don't have to search for us, and it'll be kind of part of your catalog. YouTube is where you want to find us, I think, on replay most of the time. It's just easy. Now, if you like to listen to us in podcast form, we're all over the place. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify, Odyssey. You find it. Larry, thank you for that comment. I really appreciate that. He says, I just found you guys last week. I love watching your show. I'm a Cardinals fan. I'm originally from Southern Illinois. I have lived near Nashville, Tennessee for 10 years. Big Cardinals country, all up through there. And by the way, our hearts go out to the folks in Kentucky. That is major Cardinals country, and they have had some devastating flooding and deaths near Bowling Green, Kentucky, which is right along that corridor between Nashville and Louisville. We're so sorry for everything that has happened down there, and we hope that things get better soon. That is just really, really rough. Let me take some comments here in our final 5 minutes, if that's okay with you, Matt. Matt Pauley joining us from Jupiter, Florida. David Lauderdale, let's throw him back in there. I agree about Palante. I think we need a southpaw in the rotation. Hopefully, Matz could be a weapon out of the bullpen. I think he could be. I think Liberator is a weapon out of the bullpen, and that brings to mind your thoughts on Libby as a potential starter if they need to go that route, Matt.
I think that's the other day, Marmel's comment on that was if it hits the fan, Liberator would go into the rotation. I don't think they have them stretched out because it's easy to stretch guys out at the beginning of spring. You want to do that to guys who still may have a future as a starter down the line. But this team is full on planning on Matthew Liberator being in the bullpen. And I think he covers some high leverage innings. That's going to be one of the most one of the biggest things for this team this year, Tom, is going to be who they use to cover, final 3 innings, games, 3 runs or less. We know Ryan Helsley's going to get most save situations. He's not going to get all of them. We know JoJo Romero as well. But what did they learn last year about Romero? Are they going to take their foot off the pedal with him a little bit because he ran out of gas? They don't have Andrew Kittredge, so you have to have a third guy. Last year, they had 3 guys for 3 innings, and they got overused. That's where not having Keenan Middleton last year really hurt the Cardinals because of the overuse. Kittredge was able to pitch through it for the most part. He had a couple moments where I think it was impacting him, but it definitely impacted Romero. So Liberatore is going to be a guy. Ryan Fernandez is going to be a guy. There's some other folks in there that are going to be given opportunities. And look, I know what's going to happen on the post-game show. There's going to be nights, Tom, where JoJo Romero doesn't pitch, or Matthew Liberatore, Ryan Helsley doesn't pitch, and they've been used a lot lately. And there's going to be people who are really upset about it. Maybe the Cardinals are going to blow a lead late, but I do think keeping guys healthy is going to be a really important part of this thing.
Yes, for sure. I mean, and Molly did a really nice job last year. I mean, I think he did. One of his strong suits was managing that bullpen. He gets criticized for a lot, but he handled the bullpen very, very well. And you're going to have to do it all over again with this group. Could they end up adding a reliever before the season starts? There's always seems to be a number of them out there looking for a job, Matt. And, for that matter, they actually did add some minor league additions. They haven't had a major league free agent, but they've inked a few contracts here and there. So we'll see. Nick Thompson.
Yeah. There's a lot of guys who are competing for jobs. And, some of the guys who came up last year, Chris Roycroft, talk about an interesting guy. He's got tons of velo, really big dude. One of the few guys, Tom, that when I'm interviewing him, I look up to. I mean, he is a tall guy, and he has been able to add tons of velocity. Kyle Leahy has certainly showed some things over the last couple years. Ryan Ludus got a big league opportunity this past year. So, look, there's going to be individuals, and the bullpen is so volatile, and you have guys that just kind of emerge out of nowhere. You would think that one of those guys is going to put together a very good season.
Any other conversations that you had so far that kind of took you by surprise, or any fun conversations so far with players? I know you have countdown to opening day coming up tomorrow.
Yeah, I found I'm going to get this wrong, so don't get stuck in the details here. Michael Hellman told me, I think it was his sister, danced with either Lucan Baker's sister or Lucan Baker's wife or fiance. I think they're married. Yeah, they're married, or Lucan Baker's wife. So there's that weird connection between Hellman and Baker. Something along the story I told you might have just been 80% right, but you get the idea. So you ask questions like that sometimes, and you never really know how people are connected. Also, I talked with earlier today, one of the newest additions for the Cardinals, in Nick Anderson, and he was with the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah, I said Thompson. It's Anderson.
Yeah, so he talked to Nick Anderson today. He was with the Tampa Bay Rays. He was there when Chaim Bloom was there. So when the Cardinals go get Anderson, everybody assumes, okay, this is the Chaim Bloom connection. So I asked him about that today, and he goes, I didn't even know Chaim was here until I got here. So that, maybe that is part of the reason that the Cardinals were interested, but it certainly was not something that was on Anderson's radar.
Have you seen Chaim around?
Yeah, he's just about every day I see him out here.
Yeah, and eventually we will be talking to him. I mean, again, for people who question that and wonder why he isn't talking to the media, again, this is a simple answer coming from the team, and I get it. It's out of respect for John Mozeliak, who is the spokesperson for the team, while he continues to, in his own words, clear the deck for Chaim Bloom and his group.
Yeah, it's I think it's a mutual sort of thing. I think Bloom has a ton of respect for Mo, and the last thing he would want to do is he say something that might be innocent but be taken, construed in a certain way, and it looks like he is, saying something opposite of Mo. So that's from an optic standpoint, that would be the last thing anybody would want.
All right, so what you got coming up tonight before I take the air? I've got the SLU women's game tonight at 6:45.
Yeah, so we'll have Bernie on tonight at 6:20, and that's going to take up. We'll see if we can get a few cuts from Ali in there as well. So we don't have a lot of time tonight, but we'll make the most of it.
Always great to hear some baseball talk as the Gashouse Gang, sponsored by Game Day Men's Health, Saliga Heating and Cooling, rolls on with episode 75 coming tomorrow. And looking forward to that. Have a great one, Matt. We appreciate it.
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks to our producer, Drew Young. I'm Tom Ackerman. Thank you for watching and listening to the Gashouse Gang from KMOX.